After resting for a bit, Ed turned to Lordle and asked, "Is everything went according to plan? Senior Ed, you really are, of course. I'm Lordle Ketchum." She made the horseman promise her he'd try to draw as much attention as possible, even if he had to put his life on the line, Lordle said confidently, which made Ed a bit curious. Is he really that loyal? How did she make him do that? No way, she wouldn't threaten to hold his family hostage. Ed thought to himself, then looked at Lordle with a doubtful gaze. Meanwhile, Lordle, unaware of this, continued speaking. Did you know, Senior Ed, if this plan goes well, I'll actually have power over the Elt Merchant Association. The fact that I owe you one is a big deal. What do you think? Doesn't it cheer you up? Don't you feel like I'm kinda awesome? She spoke in a teasing tone and then turned to look at Ed. But unfortunately, Ed doesn't care about this at all, and he is still sitting there playing with the campfire. Wow, what a boring reaction, Lordle said in frustration. Then she smiled again and thanked him very much. I will never forget what you did for me. Oh, just hand over the 20 coins you promised me when it's time, Ed calmly said. And before his words, Lordle could smile awkwardly. Of course, other than that, I have something I would like to ask you. Ed on the other side heard that and guessed something, so he immediately said, is there anything else that needs to be done? Is it related to Alice? No, not that. I will handle that myself. I want to ask you about Senior Jenica. You are pretty close with her, aren't you? Yeah, pretty much. She's a good person, Ed calmly replied. Lordle on this side also agrees. I respect her too, since she's kind and a great senior. She always considers others, and she's open-minded. What about it? Ed curiously said. Lordle, after listening, was a bit contemplative and then said, I am not that nice, you see. At the same time in the Awfulest Hall, amidst the battle, Elt suddenly received a report from his subordinate and hurriedly left, seemingly no longer interested in the Awfulest Hall. A few mercenaries appeared, putting Ziggs in a difficult situation. However, instead of dealing with the mercenaries, he has to stop his own ally again. You have done enough. Please stop. The mercenaries screamed in fear at the overwhelming power unleashed by Jenica. At first, Jenica had a worried look on her face, but at some point, the spirits started going all out. She needed to be stopped before any casualty took place. Thinking of this, Ziggs hurriedly asked, Senior Jenica, is something wrong? Why are you so angry? On Jenica's side, there is also a dove spirit whispering something into her ear. And right after hearing Ziggs' question, she turned to him with a darkened expression and said, No, I am not angry at all. It seems that Ed sitting and chatting happily with someone else had reached her ears, and she probably sensed that her position as the main wife was being threatened. Time quickly passed until the next day when the event of capturing the Awfulest Hall officially ended. Now, going to school was difficult for him because his uniform was covered in blood. Ziggs lent him a uniform and told him the latest news after that night. Will Lane took the blame for destroying the Awfulest Hall, and the chief maid, Alice, who had been subdued, still seemed to be completely silent on the issue. Then Lordle, one of the critical characters of the scenario, stopped to exit from the stage. Seeing how there's still no response from Elt's side, it looks like the plan worked, with events continuing as they were supposed to. We couldn't help but wait for the carrier pigeon to come bear good news. Because of this incident, I haven't had time to exercise, and my body isn't doing well either. It hurts here and there, and I can't do anything that requires energy, but I still have to complete the task. This is Ed's detailed life skills chart. Grade, Intermediate Craftsman, Specialty None, Handiness Level 13, Design Level 8. Gathering Ability Level 11, Advanced Crafting Skill slot empty. With the Advanced Crafting Skills slot open now, acquiring skills take priority. He already decided on which skill to master, Spirit Formula Infusion, which is compatible with Spirit Sorcery, and Magic Engineering, which is great for crafting household and combat amenities. For Spirit Formula Infusion, by forming a contract with a spirit and creating at least one artifact that contains a spirit formula, it becomes instinctive. As for Magic Engineering, it is unlocked once you successfully disassemble and assemble an item of a certain level of magic engineering. He don't want to waste spirit slots unnecessarily, but for now, it would be better for him to catch at least a lower spirit and make a contract, Ed thought to himself. And at that moment, Jenica's cheerful voice rang out behind him. Hey, Ed, the weather's quite chilly after the rain stopped. Oh, hey, Jenica, aren't you going to class? I have a headache and my body's in pain, so I figured I'd get some rest with the fresh air in the woods. Although she said that, looking at her appearance, I don't see any signs of a headache or feeling unwell. Ed is beside her, so I'm a bit worried and said something. You sure you didn't hurt yourself trying to help me? No, not at all. Then she rolled her eyes and asked, speaking of which, is Lordle okay? Then he replied, yeah, she is resting inside the cabin. At that moment, Jenica also turned her head and glared at the house with a wary look. Lordal was currently deep in thought at home, and although the awfulest incident had ended, there was still much to be done. First, we must defeat former chief maid Alice again, and second, prepare to negotiate to purchase the sage's sealed grimoire. But for the 3 days, I'm waiting for a reply from the Elt Merchant Company's headquarters. I have to stay in this cabin with an anxious heart. It's frustrating, but she don't hate it at all, because being with Ed Rothtailor makes her heart race. His unconditional kindness and trust without expecting anything in return make me feel like she is snuggling into a soft bed. This sensation, which is natural for everyone else, but for Lordal, someone who has lived a lifetime in indifference and distance, that feeling is more precious than gold. And at no cost does she want to give it up to someone else, especially not to Jenica Lover. For her, whether it's friends or family, a relationship based on kindness and unconditional trust is definitely something too idealistic and ordinary. If she already has too many boxes of milk, she should just give one up, Lordal thought to herself, feeling a bit angry. After that, she went back into the room, sat on the chair, and began plotting. If she refuses to give up, I'll have no choice but to use dirty tricks, and that's my area of expertise. 3 days of living together, what a thrillingly perfect advantage, she thought to herself, a triumphant smile spreading across her face. First, she thinks she will use her own way. If she bury this cabin in gold. No, she realized maybe showing sympathy isn't a good idea. Also, she is short on money at the moment, and she thinks she can help him with his tuition. Be as natural as possible she can. Then she imagines when she talks to Ed with Sundra voice, it's not like I am paying it for your sake. Don't misunderstand. After this, she feel little confused, that feels so damn cringy. And reason for all this is Lordal Kelchon hasn't had any romantic relationships at all. And while she was still feeling embarrassed, a voice suddenly rang out beside her. Can you move? That is my spot. This sudden voice made Lordal a bit curious, so she turned towards the source of the sound. And the owner of this voice was none other than the short girl Lucy, who was currently holding a blanket. Then walked straight to the middle of the room and suddenly lay down to sleep, which surprised Lordal. Lucy, what are you doing here? Lordal asked her, and she replied in a half-awake, half-asleep state about her sleeping spot. This place is the best, anywhere with sunlight is the best. But unfortunately, she hadn't even been lying down for 3 seconds then Ed came in and carried her outside. Casually threw this chibi girl into the original torn tent. Then Ed turned to Lordal and said, oh sorry Lordal, Lucy must have gone to the wooden house to find a hiding place. I kicked her out, so you can rest comfortably like at home. Lordal pondered after seeing Lucy act as if she were at home, and then she made a connection and said, it seems like Lucy often goes camping at this place, right senior? What can I say? I just see her as a natural disaster, Ed calmly replied. Lordal was feeling a bit discouraged at the moment, because she have another rival, but she thought there was still plenty of time, and we'll see who the winner is in 3 days. Time quickly passed on the second morning of Lordal's life in the wooden house. As soon as she woke up, Lordal cheerfully poked her head out the window and greeted Ed. Hello, Senior Ed. And to respond to her greeting, Jenica, who had arrived at some point without anyone noticing, cheerfully said, hello, Lordal. Oh Jenica, you're here? Ed said in surprise while fiddling with something, and Lordal over here could only sigh. Then looking at Lucy, who is lying on her stomach in the room, it seems like she is alone with Ed, but she hardly pays any attention. At that moment, Ed wiped the sweat off his forehead and happily said, finally done. What Ed had been struggling with was the bricks. New product. Handmade brick. A brick is made by pouring mud into a mold to maintain its shape. After the mud in the mold has completely dried, fire magic is used to bake it into a brick. The crafting difficulty is 2 stars. The production skill has been successfully upgraded to proficiency in a skill, and due to the agility attribute, the proficiency has immediately increased. And after making the bricks, Ed quickly got to work building the new indoor fireplace, a brick fireplace constructed by stacking handmade bricks on top of each other. Since these bricks are bonded with mud, they are not very sturdy, but it seems to function like an oven, if used indoors. It appears that a ventilation pipe needs to be added, difficulty level, 2 of 5 stars. Completing the production skills have been enhanced. The furnace could not be built due to the Awfulest Hall incident, but it has finally been completed, Ed thought happily. And to celebrate the birth of the fireplace, Ed also decided to hold an outdoor feast. Wow, this smell is really unique. You added basil, right? Lordal curiously said, and Ed, after hearing that, explained, Belle gave me some last time. You could tell right away. Huh? I have a lot of confidence in your sense of smell. Since nothing much has happened by this morning, I think it's safe to assume that things are going as planned. That's good news, but we can't let our guard down, Ed calmly said, and Lordal replied him, of course I won't, though there's a mountain of things to do right now. Lordal continued while eating and talking, like taking care of your compensation, and since I'm a merchant, I'll make sure to pay you the 20 gold coins. Would you like to receive goods instead of cash? But on the other side, Ed also remembered something and replied, saying he just remembered it was construction materials, or, no, I know what I want now. Goods created by magic. Can they still be used? Goods created by magic, really? Lordal said curiously. I'll check the inventory and tell you if we have some spares at a later time. Oh, actually, I'll think about it now. I pretty much have everything memorized anyway. The two of them kept chatting happily without realizing that Jenica's face next to them had darkened. But fortunately, in the end, Ed also recognized her presence and he asked a favor to Jenica. Jenica with happy face asked him what she can do. Next, our main character also reveals his purpose, saying, for the past few days, he has been trying to learn spirit magic. He also want to try making a contract with a low-level spirit. He wonder if she could help him with that. Jenica over here was so happy to hear that and said, then I will be Ed's teacher. I will teach you so before long, you will be able to form a contract with a mid-level spirit. And as if unable to contain her excitement at the chance to instruct Ed, she immediately summoned a sparrow spirit and said, let's try spirit connection first, try focusing. Ed, Karis, try talking to Ed, Lady Jenica, I told, this guy, can't. The scattered words of Cherry began to reach Ed's ears, leaving him utterly surprised. Oh, I can actually hear the bird saying something faintly. To start with, he needs to improve his spirit connection to the point where he can hear us talk. Is that so? But I bet Ed will progress faster than expected. But Karis immediately shouted after hearing it, think about how this man is living, how much time does he spend practicing magic? You know that from our weekly reports, the report at Dex Hall's window mentioned that his food supplies are running low, and he needs to focus on building his cabin right away. How could he possibly have time to think about anything else? But before Karis could finish speaking, Jenica quickly silenced the sparrow. She awkwardly turned to Ed and asked, did you hear that? Ed responded with a faint curiosity, what exactly is this weekly report meeting? After hearing Ed's question, Jenica's face turned pale, and she quickly looked away, unable to meet his gaze. This only made Ed even more curious. At that moment, Lordal quickly interrupted, hey, are you two done talking yet? If you're done talking, let's discuss the magic crafted items already, Lordal said. It seems like there are more goods than I expected, so I can give you more than enough. Hearing this, Ed happily replied, oh, can you sell them to me at the lowest possible price? You can use the 20 gold we agreed on and deduct it gradually. In response to Ed's clever suggestion, Lordal smiled and said, selling them to you at a low price. Hearing that from you makes me a bit upset. You know, anyway, there's not much money involved, and they're pretty much useless assets, so, even if it's free, it would still be quite difficult, Lordal continued, but in return, you'll have to come to the store every 3 days, that way, I can sell them to you at the lowest price possible. While you're there, we can drink and chat. As soon as Jenica heard Lordal's words, her alarm bells went off. Sensing the threat, it was all too clear what Lordal's intentions were. Jenica immediately stood up, still holding the skewer in her hand, and angrily said, you can't even give that for free. Ed helped you a lot this time. Lordal, crossing her arms, replied, whatever you say, I'm still a merchant. Giving things away for free goes against my professional ethics. Lie, you're just making an excuse. An excuse? For what? Lordal pretended to be clueless. While the two girls were bickering, our main character was happily eating grilled food and thinking, with this way I can start learning magic engineering and the magic spirit now. Just as he was thinking about this, Belle's voice rang out in front of them. So you are over here, Lady Lordal. I apologize for coming here so suddenly when things don't seem very peaceful. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But this message is from the former head maid, Belle said calmly. However, this only made Lordal anxious. To add more information, Belle had now become the new head maid. Going back to a moment before this, Jenica's best friend, Clara, approached Belle to reveal a secret. What do you want to tell me? Belle asked calmly. Clara, on the opposite side, gently said, oh, don't be too surprised. This is top secret information. You mustn't let it out. And try not to look too shocked. It's about Jenica. It seems she likes Ed. This Ed Rothtaylor, Clara whispered softly into Belle's ear. But Belle, who was listening nearby, felt confused and wondered if she should pretend to be surprised. She asked herself and then spoke up. So, you must be quite worried about her, Lady Clara. Clara, at that moment, cupped her face and said, I just don't understand why someone like Jenica would like that scoundrel so much, even though his reputation has improved a bit recently. As a friend, I want to support Jenica. But that's not the issue here. Lately, Jenica has been mentioning her name, Lordal Ketchuln, quite often. On the opening ceremony day, both of them were absent, and they were also absent yesterday. After all, a relationship between a man and a woman is just a game of give and take, isn't it? If that's the case, then it seems like Jenica has no chance. I barely know much about Ed Rothtaylor either. In fact, I find it amusing how she keeps gazing at him, yet he remains completely oblivious. Ultimately, he is a stubborn person to the point of absurdity, or perhaps he's just naturally a difficult person to like, Clara remarked. Belle responded, rather than being stubborn or a jerk. I think he's simply not interested in any relationship due to his own circumstances. It can't be like that, Clara insisted. He definitely opens his mouth to say some hair-raising things and feels smug about his popularity because he's surrounded by so many girls. Just thinking about it gives me the chills, she said, trembling. After Belle finished reminiscing, she thought to herself, a feisty stray cat is waiting in front of a fish shop. A naive little kitten trembles in fear when standing in front of the tiger. And a simple cat that only knows how to sleep. Thinking of this made Belle feel a headache coming on, and she sighed. Ed, sitting across from her, noticed and asked, "Are you okay?" "Oh, no, I'm sorry," she replied. "Just seeing everyone here is enough to give me a headache." Lordal chimed in, asking, "Aside from that, is there anything else you want to say?" "I want to convey a message to Lady Lordal. This is a message from Alice, the former head maid." Scene shifts to the evening. The flickering bottle fire has dispelled the darkness of the night. It was getting dark, so Jenica returned to the dormitory, and Belle had come to pick up Lucy and bring her back. From Lordal's perspective, this was an uncomfortable situation because her position had been discovered by the soldiers of the Awfulest Hall. The messenger pigeon returned with the announcement of their victory, confirming that the proposal to sell the equipment had been reviewed and finalized. The proposal to dismiss the leader had been completed, and Elt's power had been almost completely revoked. He would undoubtedly be eliminated. And the plan was nearly finalized. The letter requested her to report on her personal situation. After reading the letter, Lordal casually burned it and remarked that if the situation had developed to this point, her father must have returned to the headquarters to fight one last battle, although it would only be a futile struggle. At least there would be no more reason for him to pay attention to Sylvania. Ed, while reviewing his outfit, turned to ask, "What are the chances that Elt is still hiding something up his sleeve?" Lordal thought for a moment before replying, "He's as cunning as I am, so there's definitely a possibility." She paused, then continued, "But I have no choice but to trust Slog. He's targeting the position of the next leader of the trade association. The bigger concern we have right now is Alice," Lordal said, "but it seems that issue has been resolved as well." Ed realized something upon hearing this and remarked, "Alice didn't reveal that she was behind this incident, did she?" Lordal, feeling confident, replied, "She would never do that. That's because I paid her in advance. Between me and Elt, whoever wins, the head maid Alice will closely follow that person." The scroll delivered by Belle Maya contains a detailed list of orphanages that Alice has supported throughout her life. It includes the annual maintenance costs for these orphanages and the methods she used to provide for them. Alice never stopped trying, even though her health continued to decline. However, the Academy never listened to her. Eventually, she would no longer have the strength to work and would be unable to take responsibility for the orphanages she had supported. And then Alice bet her entire life on that plan. She was very straightforward and hid her emotions, making it seem like no one noticed her dire situation. At least, those who followed Alice understood her circumstances and her feelings, as well as the reasons that led her to act that way. At this moment, Lordal continued, saying that since she was almost victorious, Alice wanted to join her once again. However, trust, once lost, is very difficult to regain. That was what they sent her instead of a threat. Ed, who was standing nearby, also had some thoughts upon hearing that. In the world of merchants, there is no such thing as empathy. If you make such a mistake, you will be seen as a fool. She probably knows this better than anyone else beside her. After a while of studying the list, she continued, "Well, I think I don't want our involvement as the masterminds behind this occupation to be revealed. So let's behave harmoniously with each other because there are no eternal enemies or allies in this world," Lordal said with a smile, then put the list away in her chest. Then she stood up and said, "I'm planning to leave here soon. Are you going to stop by the local branch of the association to sign the contract?" "That's right," Ed replied, lighting a torch and handing it to Lordal. "Take it. It will last for a while." And before Ed's words, Lordal suddenly fell silent and said nothing. This also made our main character a bit curious and asked her what she was thinking. "Oh, it's just that you are taller than I thought, senior. I think this is a bit hasty," she said. "But if I want to take the place of those girls, maybe I should do something a little bolder." As Lordal spoke, her face grew increasingly flushed. Then she stepped closer to Ed and grabbed his tie. "Senior Ed, do you know the essence of human relationships? It's a game of push and pull, just like this tie, you can see it's all crooked. If no one can see it, why should I wear it uncomfortably? Ed replied calmly. Meanwhile, Lordle continued adjusting Ed's tie and said, I think it's good to always look neat. Even if we mess up, we're still students of Sylvania. And just as Lordle finished speaking, she seized the moment when Ed was off guard and delivered a decisive blow. Suddenly, Lordle yanked Ed's tie down forcefully, and then they kissed each other. And it took a few seconds for this to stop, then the two people separated. Lordle smiled and said, those raspberries we had for dinner were really delicious, weren't they? Thinking back, they were quite tempting. Ed felt a bit flustered and said, stay within your limits. In response to Ed's cold words, Lordle not only didn't get angry, but she also teased him, saying, you're making me sad, if you push or pull too much, it won't be good for you. Senior Ed, she said playfully, next time, I'll make you pull me closer. I need to practice my push and pull with you a lot more. After saying this, Lordle calmly left. But unfortunately, just a few seconds later, this girl tripped over the grass and fell flat on the ground. Our protagonist felt a bit embarrassed at that moment. He had tried to avoid getting too involved with the main characters of the story more than necessary. But just as he had suspected, things hadn't gone according to his plans. The stars in the sky were still beautiful, and the moon shone brightly. The chirping of insects and the crackling of the campfire remained unchanged. However, he felt that the direction of the story would continue to intertwine and evolve. Regardless of what he wanted, he still felt anxious, as if he had begun to get drawn into the center of the story. His plan was to stand aside and watch the plot unfold smoothly, only stepping in when necessary. He wasn't an ambitious person. He just wanted to graduate and enhance his skills. This action plan seemed very simple at first glance, but he began to realize just how challenging and foolish it could be in the not-so-distant future. The summer passed by just like that, and autumn arrived. The next day shifts to Jenica's location. She is currently in a meeting with her spirits. At that moment, the sparrow, Karis, is reporting everything to Jenica, revealing that the red-haired fox had kissed Ed. You couldn't overlook this matter, Lady Jenica, the sparrow, Karis, reported. Hearing this, Jenica was bewildered and asked, wait, what are you saying? They kissed. The fire dragon nearby chimed in. I saw it too. The kiss was quite passionate. Youth is truly wonderful. That girl who looks like a fire fox really knows how to play with people's hearts. What's this all about? Jenica shouted, her anger rising. And what about Ed? How did he react? The fire dragon confidently replied, you asked the right question. When I observed him, the fire dragon continued, he seemed to try to maintain his distance. Even though that girl kissed him, his expression didn't change at all. When I saw it, I was really amazed. His reaction was really cold, the fire dragon remarked. I felt embarrassed just watching him. He definitely falls into one of two categories, either that noble who has fallen from grace is a eunuch, or he simply doesn't see her as a girl at all. Well, thank goodness, Jenica sighed. But right at that moment, the fire dragon yelled at her, guys like him usually excel at attacking but are terrible at defending. From my experience, that fire fox girl is the type who becomes more aggressive the more she's rejected, if you don't do something. He's going to get swept away, Lady Jenica, she stammered in response. Even so, you just said that Ed's reaction was really cold. Turning to the fire dragon, Jenica's lack of ambition only fueled his anger. Are you really going to let that fire fox girl steal him away? I heard you agreed to teach him spirit magic. Don't waste this great opportunity. When you two are alone, at least take the initiative to kiss him. As the fire dragon grew more agitated, he continued, in the end, it's still going to take a purple elephant and a yellow monkey to drag this god along. At that moment, the blue leopard beside them chimed in with advice. Don't listen to Tarkan, you are most attractive when you are just being yourself. Right after the blue leopard finished speaking, the fire dragon excitedly rushed forward, exclaiming, oh, if you want to show off an innocent or fresh demeanor, that wouldn't be bad at all. Even the blue leopard momentarily forgot his earlier words and suggested, you must have thought about doing something new and exciting with Ed. Have you ever experienced a situation or a scene like that? Before their suggestive words, Jenica's face turned slightly red as she said, feeding each other. After hear this, both spirits began to grind their teeth in disdain. And the scene of feeding each other was truly unfolding at Ed's house. Go on, say Art, Ed spoke up, while Lucy on the opposite side opened her mouth wide and then took the spoon from him. Then, immediately after, her eyes widened, and she exclaimed, bleh, that's disgusting. Don't use other people as taste testers, Lucy said angrily. Ed, on the other hand, didn't seem to care much. He pulled out a piece of paper and began jotting down everything, just as he expected. Without a variety of spices, it's hard to taste anything distinct. Should he postpone my training until he have more diverse ingredients? He reminded himself not to rush. This is Ed's detailed life skills, rank intermediate craftsman, specialty carpentry, handiness level 14, design level 9, gathering ability level 12, carpentry level 13, hunting level 10, fishing level 7, cooking level 6, reppering level 5. Advanced crafting skill slot none. His dexterity stat is also his highest stat. It's closely related to his proficiency in life skills. If he only increase one stat, the overall efficiency will drop. So, he need to improve all my stats evenly. The problem here is that he don't have time. The new semester has already started. And the time he can spend on survival activities, even if it's shortened, is only about 5 or 6 hours. It's time he should come up with a way to manage his survival activities more effectively because he need time to check whether the plot is progressing smoothly. After all, the most important characters in the plot are the male lead and the 4 female leads. Taylor belongs to the combat department, so Ed don't see him often. However, it seems he's gradually becoming stronger. His companion, Isla, is also fulfilling her role in supporting Taylor. It seems that Princess Phinia is living well without any obstacles. It's time for her to have a conflict with Lordle, so I need to keep an eye on that situation too. Next year, Clarice will enroll, so he don't need to worry about that. The situation with the golden daughter Lordle is the most unstable. He is unsure how else early elimination will lead to changes. Additionally, it seems that her plans have also shifted. She is still trying to control the sage's sealed grimoire. Recently, he need more time because he still have to check the professor's building. This is crucial since the final boss of this arc is the Professor Glast. I see, so there is someone behind the occupation of Awfulus Hall, Professor Glast muttered as he looked at a report. If you think so, then it's very likely that's the case because you have an unusually keen intuition, Glast said while looking at the girl in front of him. Her name is Claire Elfin, and she is also Professor Glast's assistant. It seems that she has discovered some interesting details about the occupation of the Awfulus Hall, so she hurried to report to Glast. Unfortunately, things didn't turn out as she expected because right now, Glast had removed his glasses and said, "But remember, don't overlook any important information. Like the thesis on divine science I asked you to find," Glast said, exuding an incredibly dangerous aura that made Claire jump. She quickly replied, "I will find it by tomorrow morning." Scene transition to the Awfulus lobby, professor's area. At that moment in Claire's office, she lay on the couch like a dead fish, listening to a report from someone. "We've gathered information related to the incident of the Awfulus Hall occupation," the person said. "Professor Claire." "Oh, thank you, Anise," Claire replied. After finishing speaking, she also reached out to take these reports and observed. "Honestly, do I really need to be so concerned about making an accurate conclusion?" Claire sighed. "Oh my gosh, I'm exhausted to death right now." But no matter how you look at it, there's nothing suspicious at all. Scene shifts to Ed. Currently, he is at the Elt Trading Company's store, Sylvania branch, to pick up the magical items as previously arranged. But just as he met Lordle, she immediately said, "Yes, I'm very sorry, Senior Ed. I've been too busy, so I haven't prepared anything yet. Please come back next week. I've prepared tea and snacks as an apology. Also, according to the records, there are still a few magical items left here. You can pick them up at the cashier later." Hearing this, Ed replied calmly, "That's fine, but about your outfit." He said this while looking at the girl in front of him. At that moment, Lordle gently tucked her hair behind her ear and shyly replied, "I have a pretty important meeting today, so I dressed up a bit. What do you think?" Ed, on the opposite side, heard this and was a bit curious, then asked, "An important meeting, you say?" Lordle, on the other hand, noticed that Ed wasn't paying attention to her appearance, but instead focused on the so-called meeting, which made her chuckle a bit, feeling a little shy. Ed replied calmly that the wooden house was almost finished, and Lordle suggested that he probably needed furniture too. Ed confirmed this, but noted that all the products from this branch were a bit high-end and expensive compared to his budget. Ed added that if Lordle gave him the furniture for free, it would create a significant problem since giving away merchandise didn't align with the ethics of being a merchant. Lordle said that Ed's specialty was woodworking, while casually using magic to break one leg of the chair in front of him. She then turned to Ed and said, "This has become worthless, so I'll throw it away tomorrow." Ed remarked, "That's a luxury item." However, he also knew that Lordle was deliberately doing this to have a legitimate reason to give him the chair, so he could only gently accept a cup of tea and said, "Thank you." Lordle, after seeing that Ed could remain so calm, was a bit pensive and then said, "How can you always maintain that expression?" She was talking while sitting on the table in front of Ed and continued speaking. "That was a critical move for me back then. First of all, you still don't see me as a woman, right? But I see you as a gentleman, Senior Ed. Just as you thought, all my demands have a deeper meaning. Lordle began to draw circles on Ed's chest with her finger. Fortunately, our main character is extremely composed, so he coldly said, I don't know what you want me to say, but before he could finish, Lordle on the opposite side interrupted him. I don't expect you to respond. You know I would never engage in a battle I have no chance of winning. Although you remain calm now, one day I won't be the only one sitting here with a nervous and anxious heart, waiting for your reactions, right, Senior? Her smile was still as charming as ever, even though she wasn't sure if she would win or be cornered. That is the characteristic of merchants, those who never show their emotions outwardly. Scene shifts to Sylvania Academy. After finishing his conversation with Lordle, Ed makes his way to Jenica to learn spirit magic. All right, shall we begin the lesson? Jenica says cheerfully, yeah, I'm ready, Ed replies. Jenica then starts waving her staff, and with a small flick, she conjures a tiny flame in the palm of her hand. After summoning the fire spirit, Jenica looks at Ed and asks, do you want to try focusing your magical power to communicate with it? Of course, Ed replied as he began to focus his mind, preparing to connect with the fire spirit. Then, the small flame in Jenica's hand slowly shifted in shape, and Ed began to hear its voice. Nice to meet you, young Master Ed. It's an honor to form a pact with you, young Master Ed. The voice continued, I am Mug, a lower-ranked fire spirit. At last week's regular report meeting, we held a selection process to find a spirit worthy of forming a contract with Master Ed, Mug explained. I passed the first preliminary round, followed by 2 interview stages, and finally a 4th discussion round with other spirits. From that, I earned the right to become the contracted spirit with you, Master Ed. When it comes to controlling magical energy, no one in the Northern Forest can rival me, Mug boasted confidently, and I also possess the best communication skills among all the lower spirits. My heart burns with passion, though wait, I'm already on fire, aren't I? Mug chuckled before quickly regaining composure, but I promise to burn even brighter to support you with all my might, he declared, his tone shifting to a serious, disciplined demeanor. Much like a soldier who had undergone countless training sessions. Seeing Mug's disciplined demeanor, Ed couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. After playing the failed swordsman of Sylvania, he had spent time honing his skills in the art of spirit magic. They had shared laughter, told each other jokes, and supported one another in battle. Those were warm moments. With his companions always by his side, he is not sure if the feeling now is the same as back then anymore. Thinking about this, Ed couldn't help but be curious and spoke up. He wondered what kind of hellish training Mug must have undergone to act like this now. Jenica, hearing this, smiled and said, you asked me to introduce you to a good spirit, so I chose one that had previously made plans with me. His magical abilities are no joke. The process is quite lengthy, Jenica continued. I heard there was a selection competition. Who organized it? Ed asked, puzzled. It's Tarkhan, Jenica replied, a bit flustered. Then give Mug to Ed. Here, take it. Oh. It's quite warm. Ed's face lit up as he felt the connection with the spirit. On the other side, Jenica continued, you can feel the heat, right? When you resonate with the spirit you have a contract with, you can sense its form and magic even before summoning it. If the connection is too strong, you'll start to feel hotter, so make sure to control it well. If I can control the resonance, does that mean the fire energy will change as well? Ed asked, his curiosity piqued. Calling it fire energy sounds a bit odd, he continued, almost like a mechanical device. Jenica chuckled awkwardly in response. The more Ed looks at the mug, the more his eyes sparkle. Looking at it makes him think of a mobile heater. Low-rank fire spirit mug, connection level 1, spirit formula efficiency good, unique skill blessing of recover, temporary immunity to flames, explosion low-grade explosion magic, buffed fire magic abilities. Magic power details, rank skilled magic student, specialty element, intermediate magic can now be learned, spirit connection level 2, spirit understanding level 12, spirit manifestation level 1, sensory sharing level 1. Ed, still brimming with joy, exclaimed, this little flame is going to be super useful for survival, it doesn't even need wood to keep burning. Jenica, watching Ed's excitement, couldn't help but feel happy as well. I'm really glad to see you so thrilled, Ed. Lately, you've been looking so down. Like you just went through a disaster or something, she said with a light-hearted tone. Just let me know if you need anything else, Ed, Jenica said with a smile. Before we start class, I'll teach you more about resonance and empathy. It would be great if we could train together as well. Besides, you could quickly form a pact with a mid-level spirit too. We should also practice fighting alongside the spirits, she continued. I'll make some time and rent a training room. Oh, and I have a lot of accessories that help enhance resonance, but they're all in my room. So, next time we meet, Jenica started, but then her voice trailed off, becoming a bit hesitant as if she suddenly thought of something. Ed, you know, I'm actually super busy, Jenica continued, raising her voice a bit with a hint of pride. I'm one of the top students in my course, so there's literally a line of people waiting for me to teach them. You have no idea, she grinned, but then added, so. Yeah. I don't have much free time. So it is quite difficult for me to make time for you. As she spoke, Jenica's voice wavered slightly, her body trembling as she recalled the stern warnings from the spirits and her close friend Clara. You can't just keep giving away too much, Clara's voice echoed in her mind, adding to her unease. After hearing Jenica's words, Ed quickly responded, I understand, it really is like that, isn't it? I'm truly sorry, Jenica, Ed said sincerely. I took your kindness for granted. I should have offered to pay you for your time and dedication, although, it seems like I can't quite send you a proper amount, he added, reaching into his pocket. This gesture startled Jenica, who immediately exclaimed in surprise. Payment? Payment for what, Ed? Jenica replied, shocked. You're barely surviving as it is. How can you even think about wasting money like that? You should be saving every bit, not spending it carelessly. I can't believe you brought up money in this situation. It's so cold of you. We're closer than that. You really made me sad. Ed on the other side, hearing that, was full of question marks and said, didn't you bring up the money issue first? What's wrong with you all of a sudden? And before Ed's words, Jenica's face turned beet red, and she stammered. That's because Clara gave me some advice. No, wait, Jenica stammered. It's because I'm too kind. I need to learn how to say no to people, she added while nervously pressing her fingers together. Ed, standing opposite her, couldn't help but agree with her statement. You're right. She sounds like a really good friend, Ed replied, and think in they ways. But not everyone gets treated as well as you do, she added with a hint of seriousness in her voice. Anyway, next time I'll be more specific, she said. We'll meet in the training room for combat practice. I'll book the room in advance and let you know. I'll also bring some good accessories, she added. And if you need any resonance books for practice, just let me know. Since I have class in the morning, I'll head out now. See you later, Ed said, waving goodbye to her. Scene shift to Ed's house in the evening. After spending some time fiddling with the magical equipment obtained from Lordle, Ed finally acquired the skill he needed. He has acquired the advanced crafting skill Magic Engineering. An advanced crafting skill slot has been consumed. The magic engineering supplies he got from Lordle were surprisingly simple enough that he could analyze them in no time. He has finally learned a proper advanced skill. When they run out of firewood, they have to rely on mud to start a fire. And when they feel cold, they have to use the heater to warm up the space in peace. A solid home has been established, allowing him to feel more at ease. It's like the burden in his heart has been lifted, Ed smiled thoughtfully. Then he looked out the window and mumbled, how long has it been? I should go check the traps. At the same time, in the forest, near Ed's home, the voice of Assistant Professor Claire echoed, by the time I got back, it was already dark. I guess I'll come tomorrow, but thinking it over, it seems like there might be a hidden mastermind behind the incident at the Awfulest Hall. Ed Rothtaylor is a suspect. Oh, he has been expelled from his family, so now he's just Ed. All those present at the scene were either students of the Awfulest Hall or individuals associated with it. However, Taylor and Ed were the only two with no ties to the Awfulest Hall. Since Taylor had been involved in resolving the recent incident, Ed was the only one left. I heard that Ed Rothtaylor frequently appears in the Northern Forest, so I came here to check it out. However, unless he is eating or resting outdoors, there's no way he would be wandering around in such a dark forest. But at that very moment, Claire noticed something that made her eyes widen, and hurriedly slipped behind a nearby tree. Then a rustling sound came from the underbrush, and Claire had to cover her mouth tightly to avoid making unnecessary noise. She had to wait until the sound had moved away a bit before she dared to peek out and observe. What is that? That must be someone even the powerful Principal Nobel, on par with the great wizard Glocked or the great sage Sylvania, would struggle to deal with. Lucy Merrill. And it seems that my intuition was right. The culprit behind the incident at the Awfulest Hall is Ed Rothtaylor. According to her gaze, Ed was currently carrying Lucy on one shoulder while dragging a deer with the other hand that he had just caught. Just a quick glance was enough to guess that he was a villain. Claire then quietly followed Ed back to his home, wondering what had actually happened for him to carry Lucy like that. She didn't think he could easily take her down. As soon as Ed got home, he casually tossed the deer aside. Lucy was also thrown straight into the tent by him. Oh, speaking of which, I have another appointment tomorrow morning. There's still too much to do. It's already late, so I should go to bed early, Ed said as he walked straight into the house. Claire was just waiting for this opportunity. As soon as she saw Ed enter, she tiptoed toward Lucy, thinking, I need to rescue Lucy first and have to move slowly. She thought to herself not to make any noise as she reached out her hand toward the chibi girl. But before Claire's hand could even touch her, it was blown away by a surge of magic. Lucy had also woken up and appeared right behind Claire, surprising her a bit. "Lucy, you're awake. Who are you and why are you here?" Lucy asked. At that moment, Claire smiled awkwardly and explained, "I'm the assistant to the professor." But before she could finish her explanation, a gust of wind swept past her. "Oh, did she just go back to sleep in the tent?" Claire said, glancing toward Lucy inside the tent. Lucy glanced at Claire with a slightly annoyed look in her eyes. And immediately after that, Lucy left right away. In the astonished gaze of this assistant. "Just as I thought," Claire mumbled. The next day, Claire brought a pile of documents to Professor Glast and said, "Ed Rothtaylor. Excuse me, Professor, do you know about a student who was expelled from the academy for what he did? His name is Ed." Glast sighed and said, "Expelled from the academy? How am I supposed to know that? It's true, your words always surprise me, but do you know a student named Lucy?" Lucy was quickly taken down by him. "I saw him carrying her over his shoulder, just effortlessly, on my way to Ed's tent. I witnessed the whole thing. I think he might be behind the invasion of the Awfulest Hall." Hearing this, Glast was already fed up and said, "All right, just tell me everything clearly." Assistant Claire. Hearing this, Claire began to slowly explain everything she had discovered. She said, "When it comes to defending the Awfulest Hall, I successfully used my spells there, but I don't understand how the students were still able to take over. There must have been some forces inside helping them." "Did you use your spells there? Was that allowed?" Glast asked in response. Claire didn't pay much attention to that. "I hadn't thought about it, but it was necessary to counter those students who intended to cause chaos." "All right, I understand. Just write down everything clearly for me," Glast said, already uninterested. However, Claire stubbornly handed him a crystal ball and explained, "Yes, that's roughly the situation. That's why I came to investigate the student Ed. If you want to know more details, please take a look at this. All the images have been recorded here." She said this as she projected images from the crystal ball, showing the moment Ed blocked the stairs leading to the second floor. Once the image appeared, Claire added, "Look at him standing in the hall. He looks just like a crime boss. With that look in his eyes, I'm sure he's the mastermind behind the invasion of the Awfulest Hall and the chaos that erupted in the academy that night." Glast was silent for a moment after hearing this, then said, "Is that all you have? Oh, and I also mentioned earlier that the mage student Lucy was defeated by him. You seem to be confused. Lucy, that girl, she just likes to sleep. She probably fell asleep in the forest. And that's why he brought her back to the tent." Glast calmly explained, and his explanation left the assistant looking stunned. So once again, Claire was kicked out of the room by Glast. It was true that nothing she did ever seemed to go well. "Go rewrite the report for me," he said. "Yes, sir," Claire replied, feeling dejected. At that moment, Glast noticed something inside the crystal ball, looking slightly astonished. The images of the students' invasion were indeed captured in this magical orb. From what he could see, it seemed like Ed was trying to stop some of the students rather than having any ulterior motives. However, it seemed that the 3 students had defeated him. Taylor was a student with a talent for swordsmanship, and Alvira was known for her alchemical skills. With that in mind, Ed stood little chance against the 3 of them. He began to think as he looked at the scene unfolding. At this moment, the image displayed the moment Ed raised his hand to the sky and unleashed a wind blade spell to cut the chain of the chandelier. Then everything continued to unfold, and Professor Glast couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. At that moment, in a corner of the northern forest, a huge explosion suddenly occurred, sending rocks and debris flying everywhere. The cause of the explosion was a magical dagger that collided with a tree, resulting in a significant blast. This dagger was a special magical item that Ed had just created. New finished product, ceremonial dagger. Explosion, a ceremonial dagger with a spirit formula that engraves explosion magic. The engraved magic can be activated within a certain distance. The activation speed is very fast, and the magic efficiency is outstanding due to its prior engraving. Crafting difficulty 2-star. Injected spirit formula, spirit magic explosion, magic accumulation capacity medium, connection distance narrow. Ed took the dagger out of the tree and happily exclaimed that it had been with him since his first days there. He felt he couldn't survive without it, expressing his gratitude for the luck he had in inscribing many ancient runes on it, which had greatly enhanced its power. Beside him, the fire spirit Mug took the opportunity to compliment Ed, congratulating him on successfully inscribing the spirit formula of elemental explosion onto the dagger. Mug assured him that when he used it in the future, it would have even more powerful effects. "You've taken another step forward, young Master Ed. This is an occasion to rejoice. What great news! To celebrate Master Ed's success, I will sing a song of praise to make the Master happy." This is an ancient song about a shepherd who successfully nurtured his sheep, passed down through many generations. But as Mug began to share this, Ed quickly grabbed its wing, looking at the fire spirit with a judging gaze. Mug reacted swiftly, realizing Ed seemed a bit annoyed. It quickly adjusted its tone, saying, "Oh Master Ed, if you're not satisfied, feel free to tell me, and I won't do it again. I'll learn from this experience," it said, realizing its mistake. "Please forgive me and give me time to reflect on my wrongdoings," it added, shedding tears. Unfortunately, this plea didn't seem to affect Ed at all. The spirits that have departed from their physical forms enter the realm of low-ranking spirits and serve humans. In this state, they choose powerful mages to learn from and to be protected by. Simply put, it's like Jenica, a high-level spirit mage. It's quite normal for lesser spirits, lacking significant power, to form contracts with her. However, for someone like Ed Rothtaylor, who hasn't been established as particularly talented, this is quite unusual. Thinking about this, Ed stared intently at the bat in front of him and said seriously, "If you have something to say, just go ahead." "I've been wondering why you chose to form a contract with me," Ed said. "Something feels off here. I'm not exactly a spirit mage, and you can't really learn anything from me. So, did you promise someone something?" "This needs to be clarified," Ed continued. "We've been together long enough that we shouldn't be strangers anymore." The fire bat, Mug, shivered at those words, realizing the seriousness of the situation. Mug started to wail, "Oh, Master Ed, how could I ever dare to hide anything from you?" With all the loyalty in his heart, he continued, "Everything I say comes from the bottom of my heart. I follow you out of respect. For a tiny creature like me, being by your side is a great honor." Mug continued, "By forming a contract with you, I can gain many benefits from my master. Along with Lady Jenica, the knowledge you possess about ancient magic and the original spells has already helped me immensely," he explained. "With these two advantages, I can develop much faster than other low-rank spirits." Ed calmly asked, "All right, do you have anything else to say?" Upon hearing this, Mug continued to boast, trying to impress the young man further. "Of course, there's plenty more," Mug said excitedly. "What you did at the academy has changed everything. Your reputation was quite something before, but now everyone holds you in high regard. Those bad habits of yours are gone, and because of that, I've reaped the benefits too." "It seems I understand you better now," Ed said. Meanwhile, Mug began to share about his past. "My life since arriving in this world has been full of struggles. Higher-ranking spirits constantly oppressed me, making my existence miserable. Now that I'm outside, I feel incredibly happy. But I can't blame anyone for that. The spirit hierarchy has existed for a long time. Everyone wants more power. Still, I hope to become stronger in the future, so I won't have to endure such oppression anymore." "All right, it seems we share a similar fate," Ed said. "We will rely on each other and strive together." "Thank you so much, Master Ed," Mug replied. "Whatever you say, I will do my best to learn. I can't rely on your power anymore." "That's fine, just do what you think is best," Ed encouraged. Ed continued chopping wood, his mind wandering. It was true that with the combat skills he possessed, he still felt he lacked significantly. However, due to his diligent training, his physique had improved significantly. Now, he could say that he had developed a bit of muscle. The stockpile in the house also had plenty of food, and the fruits and vegetables were nearly complete. He had established a temporary residence and no longer had to worry about many additional things. He was putting in more effort into his studies. Although some lessons were still difficult to understand, he had grasped many basic theories and understood more than before. He needed to allocate some time to study more effectively. With continuous learning like this, the knowledge would stay in his mind. Natural talent or superior memory wouldn't be necessary if he kept up his diligent studying and training. Day by day, he needed to keep pushing himself. Only by doing so could he achieve better results in his studies, training, and ensure his survival would go as he wished. As time passed, everything would improve. Tomorrow would be better than yesterday. That was what he aimed for. Ed murmured this to himself as he slowly drifted off to sleep. Then, suddenly, loud calls echoed in Ed's ear, startling our protagonist awake. "Ed, wake up. What's wrong with you, Ed?" Ed heard this and replied, "Oh, sorry, Jenica, I was just thinking about everything that's been happening, so I got a bit distracted." Jenica responded, "You've done well with everything you're doing, just don't push yourself too hard, take care of your health." At this moment, Ed looked at the 3 letters in his hand and pondered. "It seems I should focus on the 3 letters I received today." One letter was sent from the academy, and the second letter was from the Elt Trading Guild. Neither of these 2 letters seemed particularly noteworthy. The third letter caught his attention more than the others. It indicated that the situation had escalated far beyond what he had known. This matter was extremely serious and could not be taken lightly. In this second volume, everything simply revolved around the events between the 2 factions, the students confronting each other, as well as the struggle to obtain the sage's sealed grimoire. However, later on, it had turned into a three-way battle at the academy, with the Merchant Guild Elt and the Rothtaler family also getting involved. Krapen Rothtaler intended to steal the sage's sealed grimoire to serve his research on biological magic. Of course, that was far from a simple task, so he had to resort to negotiations to obtain the sage's sealed grimoire. Krapen Rothtaler was the boss who only appeared in the 4th chapter of this game, but at this point, he had made his appearance. Currently, his power was above everyone else's, who could possibly stand against him. This was a difficult problem to resolve, unless the game's storyline changed in some way, so it would be difficult to keep the sage's sealed grimoire if he intended to steal it. Of course, possessing this grimoire would only make him even stronger. He was already the boss of Chapter 4, and here we were, still in Chapter 2, who could possibly stand against him. But whatever the case, whether he got the grimoire or not, just his appearance alone would seal everyone's fate. This letter only briefly mentioned Krapen Rothtaler and predicted his next actions at the academy, leaving many things still unknown to him. However, there was a message for him that he needed to pay attention to and follow. Ed thought deeply while focusing on the letter. At the same time, in a corner of the academy, the Princess Fenia's guard was reporting everything back to her. I went to the northern forest and delivered the letter to him, just as you instructed, Your Highness. Good, well done, Claire, Fenia replied calmly. At the same time, she began to ponder the situation in the academy. Given the circumstances, she suspected that the Sylvania Academy was facing financial concerns. Even though I can't directly support private educational institutions like the Sylvania Academy, if this situation continues, all parties will face difficulties. The most concerning aspect is that the Elt Merchant Association could have the opportunity to obtain the sage's sealed grimoire. This grimoire cannot be sold for money to sustain the academy. If that happens, it would be a disgrace for the Sylvania Academy. Therefore, the principal has asked for my assistance. However, there is still an issue. Something feels off here. How could Krapen Rothtaler know about this negotiation and decide to get involved? Fenia wondered aloud. Claire, listening from across the room, chimed in with his thoughts. It seems that Kid Ed reported back earlier. He lives in the academy, so he must have heard the rumors. If I were a child from that family, I wouldn't let the chance to restore my family's honor slip away. But just as he finished speaking, a voice suddenly echoed from behind, catching both of their attention. I don't think it's necessarily him. I'm just a commoner here, the owner of the voice said. Is it possible for me to sit here and talk with the princess? The speaker was none other than Lordle. Fenia stared intently at her and said, I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you hated me, Lordle, Fenia said. Lordle calmly replied, Why would you say that? Your Highness, anyone can participate in business. Whether I like you or not doesn't matter in this matter. Speaking of which, Lordle continued, the incident with Krapen Rothtaler attempting to seize the sage's sealed grimoire could be connected to my father. Fenia, startled by Lordle's words, quickly asked, What do you mean by that? Lordle, sitting across from Fenia, explained without hesitation, detailing the situation step by step. From the beginning, he had demanded that my father pay for the contracts his company owed him. So, this could be one of the conditions my father had to concede to gain some relief from those debts. Of course, my father is already gone, but because of this, he seems even more determined to seize the grimoire. If he gets the grimoire, he might have a chance to negotiate with the Merchant Association. Princess Fenia, upon hearing this, had some doubts. But I don't understand this. The Merchant Association only acts in their own interest. Wouldn't they sell the grimoire to the Rothtaler family after acquiring it? Yet both sides are fighting over this item. It seems like the Elt Merchant Association is at odds with the Rothtaler family for it. Why don't they just negotiate with each other? Lordle smiled and replied, Of course, it's because I don't want the grimoire to belong to the Rothtaler family. My background and position in the Merchant Association are quite special. I have a completely different perspective from my father, as you know, Princess. Fenia interrupted, saying, That's enough about your family's internal affairs. I don't want to discuss it any further. Lordle, hearing the princess's words, decided not to elaborate further on her family's business. Instead, she directly addressed the matter, stating, The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Of course, if you, princess, want to invest in my trade association instead of the Rothtaler family, then both sides would benefit. Lordle continued, After all, we already know each other. Naturally, doing so would also please Senior Ed, isn't that right, Princess? If there's anything you don't understand, you can always ask Senior Ed. So you're considering him too? Fenia asked curiously. Of course, he's been expelled from the academy and is now living alone in the forest, Lordle replied, but don't think he still has ties with the Rothtaler family. Poor guy, he's been disowned by his family too. Her tone was gentle as she spoke. These words surprised the princess across from her. A cold-hearted merchant was genuinely concerned for someone else. Phinia hadn't thought of it that way before. As she reflected on this, she spoke up, but what if he does it for his own selfish gain? I see him relying on everyone around him. If there's a good deal to be had, how could he possibly let it slip away? Surely he hasn't mentioned this to you. Lordle nodded and replied, it's true, he hasn't mentioned anything. Phinia continued, if he doesn't say anything, then I'll just assume he's planning to do what's beneficial for himself, even if it means using him for my own purpose. At her words, Lordle across from her began to tremble her body. Then she laughed to the point of tears, deceive and exploit. Who's exploiting? At this moment, Lordle stood up and addressed Princess Phinia, saying, Your Highness, I have something to say. This time, we are on the same side, aren't we? Lordle said, so, I want to give you some sincere advice. Don't try to manipulate him half-heartedly, Lordle warned, her tone laced with implications. In the end, you might find yourself being the one who gets used. Enough, Claire, Phinia called out, her mind racing with thoughts about the enigmatic Ed Rothtaylor. Now, Crapen Rothtaylor was also linked to this business transaction. But perhaps what was even more alarming was that the brave and proud girl didn't bow her head before Princess Phinia like everyone else did. In the end, had she ever shown confusion and concern for anyone else like that before? On the side of Lordle, after returning to the trading branch to meet Ed early, she couldn't help but exclaim in astonishment. What is this? This astonishment stemmed from the fact that, for some reason, Jenica was also present here with Ed. Hi, Lordle, long time no see, how have you been? Jenica said with a bright smile. Meanwhile, our main character displayed a look as if they were on the verge of death and weakly greeting her. Upon hearing Jenica's greeting, Lordle clenched her teeth and replied, I'm sorry, I didn't know Senior Jenica would be here, so I only prepared 2 cups of Pie-Lance and rosemary tea. Would you like some cold water instead? Jenica quickly responded, that's fine. It seems this tea is stored in the guild stock for preservation, but it's a product meant for sale, so it can't be served to guests. That's right, Lordle retorted, visibly annoyed. Ed handed his cup of tea to Jenica, saying, Go ahead and have the tea, Jenica. I'll just drink some water. All right, Jenica replied cheerfully. This made Lordle beside them tremble with anger. After a moment, Lordle finally regained her composure and smiled, saying, Oh right. You should go get the magical item. All right, Ed replied quickly. Then, the two hurriedly followed Lordle to where the magical item was kept. Upon seeing the shiny pile of magical items placed on the shelf, Jenica couldn't help but scream in frustration. Here, look at them. They look so new that there's not even a speck of dust. Giving away your product is against the merchant's ethics, and in response to her accusation, Lordle smiled and said, Oh my, Senior Jenica, you really can't tell the quality of the products at all. If you look closely, these items all have a lot of flaws. Really? This one? Jenica said while squinting her eyes, only then noticing a tiny scratch. Then she gritted her teeth and turned to Lordle, asking if she did it on purpose. Yes, the most important thing here isn't whether these products can be sold, but whether they are useful for Senior Ed. At that moment, Ed, who had been watching the two argue, finally spoke up. He said, Thank you, but receiving these items for free feels a bit wrong, especially since I haven't paid for the previous purchases yet. This is already the 4th time. Lordle smiled and replied, You just need to remember our contract, and that's enough. After all, it's not a huge amount of gold. Jenica, who was nearby, heard about the contract and looked worried. She turned to say, Honestly, if he could pay back the full amount as soon as possible and end the contract with you, that would be best. You and he are the ones balancing the silver in this matter, right?
Yeah.
You're right. Next, they continued to chatter about something Ed couldn't quite hear because his mind was completely elsewhere. A familiar sensation washed over him, as if he were floating in water. There were so many things he needed to do, but lately, he kept feeling this way. He needed to stay alert about Crapen Rothtaylor, who was involved in the purchase of the sage's sealed grimoire. There are still 2 weeks left, so the urgent thing right now is that he needs to make a mattress for the bed. He thinks he can spread out some fabric and stuff it with wool or various other types of materials to make it soft. The next day, he needs to take care of the little deer he just caught, and it's also time to clean up inside the tent again. And there's Lucy's jerky too, Ed thought, as his eyes slowly began to fade until everything turned pitch black. The last image he saw was the worried faces of Lordle and Jenica looking at him. The scene shifts to Princess Phinia, who is still caught up in her thoughts about Ed. Is it time for her to admit it? The way he fished diligently at the campsite, along with the calm and detailed answers he gave during the fight with Glaskin, lingered in her mind. Other students said he only focused on his studies, but Lordle warned her not to underestimate him. Perhaps my warning wasn't effective enough. I will double check to be sure. So I ordered him to go to the royal mansion. Thinking about this, Phineas turned to the knight beside her and said, Claire, have we decided on tomorrow's schedule? When will Ed Rothtailor arrive? In response to the princess's question, Claire awkwardly replied, Your Highness Phineas, it seems he won't be able to come here for now. What's the reason? How could he refuse a royal order? Phineas asked. The knight explained, Ed Rothtailor has fainted from exhaustion. And his words truly left the princess a bit astonished. And situation of Ed right now is status exhaustion. Symptoms include high fever due to overwork, indigestion, chronic fatigue, migraine, a periodic comatose state, difficulty breathing, deteriorating vision, mana complications, and muscle laxity. You need to rest adequately to recover from this abnormal condition. That is the advice the system gave to Ed. At this moment, our main character was slowly coming back to consciousness in a daze. I can't breathe, my whole body feels heavy, and my stomach is burning hot, he thought. Ed thought to himself as he glanced down and noticed Lucy sleeping on his stomach. No wonder I felt so hot, he realized. But at this moment, Lucy still doesn't know that Ed has woken up. Actually, she was sleeping even deeper than he was, mumbling in her sleep, just a little more. And this left Ed at a loss for words, especially since she was even talking in her sleep, Ed thought to himself while watching her. Lucy's body felt much lighter than it appeared, to the point where Ed wondered if she was even human. But I couldn't move at all. Lucy still looked normal. So was there something wrong with my body? I was completely exhausted. Watch, so this is my tent, but the blanket must belong to the elite merchant guild. Just as Ed thought about this, Lucy woke up and said, I'm so hungry. Besides eating and sleeping, she didn't seem to do much of anything else. When Lucy noticed that Ed had woken up, she quickly said, Congratulations on waking up. Your magic is all messed up right now. You've been studying and practicing magic non-stop without letting your body rest, Lucy said. After doing this for months, this is the result. As she spoke, she began using some kind of magic to heal Ed. While Ed spoke to her, he asked, So you did all this while I was asleep? Lucy replied, Yeah. It wasn't too hard, but it was so boring that I ended up falling asleep a few times. It seems they caught me sleeping a few times. What a hassle, Lucy thought, but she shrugged it off. This is necessary, so I guess we can't complain too much. Don't get sick, okay? Illness is really troublesome. Some even die from it, Lucy said sadly. Ed understood why she felt this way. She was remembering someone close to her, someone who had passed away in bed. Thinking about this, he gently said, Thank you. It's thanks to you that I was able to recover. At that moment, a voice rang out from outside the door, capturing Ed's attention. Are you awake, Senior? A voice called from outside. I wasn't sure if we could use the stove inside, so I started a fire out here. The owner of the voice was Ziggs, whose hair had grown longer over time, giving him a much gentler appearance. At that moment, Ziggs caught sight of a rather intimate scene between the two people in front of him. Next, even a lazy person like Lucy couldn't keep her composure any longer, and hurriedly ran away through the chimney. With a slightly disdainful look, he said, Senior, just how many girls are there? Oh, that's true. Strong men often have many women, and that's nothing unusual, he mused. This is an open-minded view of community living. Perhaps my perspective on community life is too one-sided. Ed, noticing the young man, and asked, Why are you here? Ziggs explained slowly. It's because Senior Jenica needs to attend class, and Lordle has already gone back since he can't leave the business for too long. Right after the soup pot was cooked, Ziggs began feeding Ed. As soon as Ed took the first spoonful, he stuck out his tongue. Usually, I can eat anything except this, Ziggs calmly replied. What can I do? If someone gentle like Elka or Clara fed you, it might be better. But Lordle said that no girl is allowed to feed you, Ziggs sighed. Ed, struggling to swallow the unappetizing food, thought to himself that he should check the storyline as usual. With that in mind, he spoke up and asked, Hey, have the alchemy students secretly grown ginseng and caused trouble? Upon hearing Ed's question, Ziggs recalled a few things and replied, Oh, that was Alvira, the troublemaker. In the end, Taylor and Clebius quickly dealt with it. Great. It seems like the second scene of the Academy exploration has been successfully completed. Ed, feeling excited, continued, I heard rumors that Taylor's team defeated a monster that had sneaked into the Academy's underground water system. Ziggs responded, Oh, yes, we handled that. But is there really such a rumor? Ed clarified. In the second scene of Chapter 7, the demon in the underground, then the biggest event happening now is the negotiation to buy the sage's sealed grimoire, Ed thought. He then asked, How long have I been unconscious? Today marks the 10th day, Ziggs replied. Everyone will be astonished to see you awake, Senior. But they can't stay with you today, Ziggs continued. At this hour, Senior Jenica still has to remain at the Academy, and Lordle has to prepare for an important negotiation tomorrow, so he had to leave. Turning to Ed, Ziggs watched as Ed, upon realizing he had been unconscious for 10 days, suddenly snatched the bowl from his hands. Ed gulped down the soup, surprised by its taste. "I thought only a day or two had passed," he said, pausing to catch his breath. "But I can't believe I've been asleep for 10 days. Ziggs, intrigued by Ed's sudden actions, opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say anything, Ed cut in. "Ziggs, I need to send a message to Lordle right away," Ed insisted, urgency lacing his tone. "I have to hurry, there's no time to waste," he thought to himself, feeling the pressure of the situation. Time passed swiftly, and it had been a day since Ed woke up. At this moment, during scene 10, the negotiation to purchase the sage's sealed grimoire had begun. This scene was filled with numerous variables, each influencing the outcome in unpredictable ways. The ones involved include Princess Phenia alias Chloe, Vice President of the Elt Association, Lordle Ketchuln, and the head of the Rothaler Duke family, Crapin Roth Taylor, the final boss of Act 4.